Hello, VC. This is the long-awaited, unduplicated, emancipated 14th volume of Andre's Funk Artist Profiles on Vinyl. I haven't done one of these in 2 years, so there's going to be a whole lot of ground to cover. And as you know, in these funk volumes, I cover the whole spectrum of the funky world, the jazz, the soul, the funk, all of it. And here we are, 20 albums in that category. I haven't done this in 2 years. It's going to be a lot, but let's start with this band, Mandrill. One of me and Henrique, another shout out to him, favorite bands. This is their debut album from 1970. I love their use of the mandrill on the cover. Look at that cover art, people. That's some seriously meaningful morphing right there. Ever since this world of ours began, man's been killing off his fellow man, cursing and swearing and threatening the other side, as he waved flags and symbols saying peace to all mankind. Those words are why I love funk and jazz of the 70s. People music, talking about reality. I just love that. And there's the band right here. Great Afro, Latin, jazz, funk, process band. Just amazing album. Of course, these are all in chronological order. Next up, we have The Temptations, Solid Rock, from 1972. I can't tell you how many years I've been looking for this album. This was the first album where they had Damon Harris taking over for Eddie Kendricks on it. It was kind of between Just My Imagination and Papa Was a Rolling Stone. One of my favorite songs on here is the song Superstar. Remember How You Get Where You Are. That is not the Carpenter song. That is a whole other thing. The big hit off of this is It's Summer. There's Norman Whitfield and Barrett Strong. And there's the Temps at that time. Love, love, love that album. Fantastic. The Stylistics. I don't know if I can describe how wonderful this album actually is. The big hit is I'm Stone in Love with You, but this entire album, Break Up to Make Up, another hit, everything is conceptually unified by Tom Bell at Philly. You know, Tom Bell, especially combined with a falsetto singer like Russell Tompkins and the musicians playing on this, Norman Harris, who would later work with Eddie Kendricks at Motown. I mean, this is just a work of funky soul genius. Again, from 1972. I don't think the Stylistics get as much credit as they deserve. You all know this is one of my favorite groups, the Crusaders, Hollywood. Somebody's got an Oscar right there. New Spanish Harlem on this album. Wayne Henderson was still in the band. Chuck Rainey is on this, and Reggie Johnson on acoustic bass. Fantastic album. It wasn't sealed, but it still came in the shrink wrap. I think this is actually a first pressing of that album. Again, from 1972. New Birth. You don't see a lot of their albums out in the wild. This is in fair condition, but I love their cover. This kind of looks a little bit like Josephine Baker to me. It isn't, of course. They were actually an offshoot of an instrumental band called the Nightlighters. Kind of the vocal aspect of that. Great funky soul and ballads from 1973. It's been a long time. Johnny Mathis. He went through a period where I believe he was produced by Tom Bell on an album and Johnny Bristol on this one, The Heart of a Man. Great funky soul album from Johnny Mathis in the mid-70s when he was kind of expanding his sound out of the crooner thing from 1974 on Columbia Records. Airto Moyer, Identity, 1975. Whenever I see an Airto album, I just pick it up. No questions asked. This is on the early Aerosmith label. There's some passport photos from my Airto over the years. Great Latin fusion funk album, 1975. Another album from 1975, Roberta Flack, Feel Like Making Love. I love the title song of this album. It was produced by Bob James. I'm not sure who that baby is in the middle there, but the good possibility that might be a picture of a very young... No, I couldn't be because Bernard Wright would have been a little older, and he was Roberta Flack's son. I didn't actually know that. Fantastic album. She does a version of Grover Washington's Mr. Magic on here, too. Lee Ritenour, First Course, his first album. I believe this is from 1976 on the Epic label. Dave Grusin, Harvey Mason, Patrice Rushen, Ian Underwood, again Chuck Rainey, Louis Johnson, Tom Scott, Chuck Finley, Ernie Watts. Great jazz funk classic. So happy I found that. The Emotions, Rejoice. This has Best of My Love on it from 1977, but it ends on a fantastic note with the title track, which is just an amazing piece of cinematic Latin funk. I think if you have this album, yeah, you'll get Best of My Love right here at the start, but go to the second side and listen to the final cut. It is even stronger to me in some cases. This is just an amazing group overall. Do You Want to Get Funky With Me? Peter Brown, also 1977. Amazing kind of multi-instrumentalist type disco funk. Doesn't sound too far removed in some places from Prince's debut album, For You, which was recorded at the same time. And this has, this is on the Drive label. I don't know if you can see that. It's got like a road in the middle. Looks kind of like something you'd see on the cover of a Kraftwerk label, or a Kraftwerk album, I should say, like Autobahn. Unique label, and they're distributed by TK. One of my personal favorite albums when I first heard it. Aretha Franklin, Sweet Passion, 1977. This was actually an album produced by Lamont Dozier, for the most part. She had just recorded a couple albums with Curtis Mayfield. This isn't a bad funky soul album at all, but it wasn't from Aretha's prime period. It was toward the end of her Atlantic run, and it wasn't, things weren't doing so commercially well for her, but it is still Aretha Franklin. You know, it's the late 70s, and she is smoking on this album. Mary Watkins, the local record store I have, Bull Moose, has been selling a lot of these indie releases that are generally by female artists who recorded their own music in the mid to late 1970s. People like Chris Williamson, Meg Christensen. This one is on the Olivia label. It's deep green. This album is here because it has some serious jazz funk on it from 1978. Now, if you want serious funk, this is where you want to go. Cameo, We All Know Who We Are. I love that cover, and I love its concept. Chocolate City Records. I may have to show you that label, because I don't think I've showed that around a whole lot. This album has It's Serious, Inflation, See on the Funk. This was their P-Funk oriented period when they were a huge band. Way before Word Up. There's the Chocolate City label. Mother's Finest, Mother Factor. Actually, one of the early funk metal groups. This is an album of theirs that leads almost entirely toward funk, and it really works for their lead singer, Joyce Kennedy, who has a big, ballsy, throaty voice. I love this album through and through, and I love the whole funky vibe of their look, too. Wayne Henderson, That was also 1978. Those last two albums were also 1978, by the way. Cameo and Mother's Finest. This is 1979. Wayne Henderson's emphasized album. Lightning coming out of his hands there. This has Dancin', Lovin' Affair, the title track, and Feel the Fire. Those are just punishing disco-era jazz funk numbers. I mean, this is just... It lives up to the cover, let's put it that way. The whole vibe of it just lives up to the funky ferocity. Now, if you want a little gentility in your groove, you always got Joe Sample of the Crusaders. This album is called Carmel. This album is from 1979 as well. If you look in the back, it says the Crusaders production on ABC Records. Clear. You know, I didn't know a lot about this band for a while, but Clear were actually one of the earlier proto boogie funk kind of bands. And this is their, I believe, their second album from 1979. Really polished production on Atlantic Records. Gary's Gang, Keep On Dancin'. This is a disco album from 1979 that really has an unusually strong Afro-Latin element, even for the disco era. It's actually on the Columbia label with an unusual Sam Productions, like ARC with Earth, Wind & Fire. Really great album with extended Latin disco songs. Crowd Pleasers. This is a rather obscure funk band. This has had a kind of a P-Funk style cover. Here's a picture of that band. There was a story behind them, but I can't remember them for the life of me on this. They were actually on the Westbound label. I don't think I have any Westbound labels other than the new reprint of the Funkadelic. That's what the Westbound label looked like in 1979, people. Had a little truck on it. Funkadelic and the Ohio Players used to record there, of course. Now, this is Do It Yourself. Ian Dury in the Blockheads. Starts right out in a major funky way with the In-Betweenies. This was the band that Chaz Jankel was in. As a matter of fact, there's Chaz right there. There's Ian Dury. And there's the rest of the band. I'm going to show you the label on this. There's the label right here. Anyway, so that is my latest collection of funk on vinyl. It's a whopping 20 records to have to deal with here. But it is so worth it. There might be another volume covering the 70s and definitely into the 80s a little bit later. But it's nice to be back with all this funky stuff. There's so much variety here, and I highly recommend any of these albums if you find them out in the wild. Enjoy your music, everybody. Peace.